Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Javon Harrington, back to hit you with another video, and today we're going to be continuing Naruto Yokai Shippuden, What If Sasuke Uchiha Was a Girl, Part 5. Now I do want to say that as we're getting into this portion of Naruto, the war arc, there isn't going to be a whole lot in terms of deep detail, simply because once you get to the war, there's really a lot of things that change and don't change as an effect. So it's mostly going to be descriptive in a way. Like, I won't go too deep in detail of the battles, simply because I can't really, articulate everything verbatim as to how the war would play out with the shinobi that are there. And also, we're going to be getting into the war arc where a lot of things happen. So to try to condense it down for time, I'm not going to redo any fights that happen in the show. Just because they might be a little bit different, they still will be overall the same. So there won't really be an overall reason for me to go into great detail and length. As far as character development goes, I'll go into detail about that. But as far as the actual fights, they'll just be brief summaries, if anything else. So I do hope that makes sense. For example, if you have something like Kakashi versus Edo Zabuza, I'm not going to go into a full breakdown of that fight, simply because we've already seen that fight, and for me to try to re-break it down, it really wouldn't do too much. Even if you add one or two new fighters into the fight, I might incorporate how them being there will change the fight overall, but it won't be to an extent where I have to do a 10-15 minute dissection of the fight to explain how they impacted. I'm just hoping that you can tell how they'll impact the fight, so I do hope that makes sense on that front. Also, since we'll be in the war arc, it's going to be covering the final parts of Naruto Yokai Shippuden. So these videos aren't really going to be overly too long. Honestly, the next few parts might just be 20-30 minutes tops. And that's probably going to be how we'll wrap up the series as a whole. So I do hope you'll understand on that regard. The videos aren't really going to need to be too long, as a lot of things have changed now in this story due to things that took place. Obviously, not going to be, I'm not going to spoil the ending, but, the ending is going to be a lot different than it was in the original show. So things aren't going to have to play out as long as they did originally. And again, for the final part, as far as the Boruto aspect of the series, the Boruto manga, I believe, is reaching the time skip in the next few months. So after that happens and we get the first part of Boruto wrapped up and in the books, then I will cover that part of the series in What If Sasuke Uchiha Was a Girl, because obviously that's going to change a lot as well. And again, let me know down in the comment section below, do you want Boruto's name to still be Boruto, or do you want him to have a new name? The new name would be Ichiro. That's just the name that I found. It means firstborn child. And I don't think that because Naruto is not with Hinata that his name wouldn't be Boruto. Or it can still be Boruto if you want to be Boruto for simplicity's sake. Boruto or Ichiro, it's up to you. It doesn't, matter to me. So, just keep that in mind as we get more and more into the story going forward. But I do want to say thank you to everyone who supports Power Core Productions and Podcastings. We are almost at 950 subscribers. And once we reach that point, we'll be less than 50 away from 1K and beyond. So I'm truly thankful to everyone who supports Power Core Productions and Podcastings. And as always, don't forget to make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure you hit that bell for post notifications, so you'll always be up to date whenever a video comes out now and in the future. But anyway, we're not going to keep you here for too long. We're going to get into today's video. So as always, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. As the Hidden Leaf would recover from Pain's attack, Kakashi would be moving on to more pressing matters. Kakashi was not one to enjoy having the role of leadership, especially on such a grand scale as being an interim Kage, as he, along with his friend Might Guy and his student Rock Lee, would arrive to the land of iron. They would be greeted by those of the samurai, as they would be invited into the conference hall, where they would meet to discuss the threat of the Akatsuki. Among the others would be the famed Kage of the other great nations, Lord Raikage A, along with his guards in Darui and C. There would be the Sushi Kage, along with his guards. There would be the Mizukage, Mei, and her guards. Gara, the Kaze Kage, and his guards. All would be gathered together as they would discuss the threat of the Akatsuki. The Raikage would start by calling out Inoki, not being particularly pleased that he hadn't dealt with his own rogue shinobi, knowing that if he hadn't gotten wind of the situation when he did, that his brother might have been captured. Inoki would apologize, stating that Dataro was a thorn in his side for years, and that he should have taken him out long ago. However, this would break down into a slur of words between the stone and the cloud. Kakashi merely staying off to the side, trying to maintain what little peace could be held. The five great nations had not seen eye to eye on many things. However, the Akatsuki were one thing that were not going to go away for any of them. However, despite this looming threat, some of the Kage felt as though it would be best to simply maintain their own borders, and that they shouldn't be too hasty to form alliances. However, surprisingly to Kakashi, the sand and the mist were on the side of the leaf. The mist, as they were grateful for having Suigetsu returned to them along with the executioner's blade, took that as a sign of good fate. And Gaara of the Sand Village already owed his life to Naruto, and as such was an ally to the leaf. Kakashi understood all too well the animosity between the stone and the cloud against the Hidden Leaf Village. After all, it was his sensei, the late 4th Hokage, who single-handedly turned the tide of battle against the Stone Village during the Third Great Shinobi War. And the Hidden Cloud Village had committed many forms of treachery against the Leaf. Most notably was the Hyuga incident. However, all the same, Kakashi mainly stated that the Hidden Leaf itself was recovering from an attack, and that thankfully their Jinchuriki, the Ninetales Naruto Uzumaki, had avoided capture, and it even dealt the Akatsuki a critical blow. However, all the same, the Akatsuki were one thing that were not going to go away for any of them. And if they were going to be able to come out of this on the other side, then they had to work together. Another voice in the room would echo those sentiments. As the five Kage would turn, they would see, sitting above them, would be a man in a Akatsuki robe. It would be the man in the orange mask, who the Hidden Leaf had encountered a few times. It was believed that there was more to him than met the eye, and now they were going to learn. The masked man claimed to be Madara Uchiha, as a single Sharingan glared through the hole in the mask. Many in the room would freeze at the name. The name of Madara, a name that struck fear into the hearts of his enemies. A man everyone thought to be dead, now in fact claimed to be alive. The masked man would look down at the five Kage, and would tell them simply that he would give them an ultimatum: to hand over the 8 and 9 tails, or there would be consequences. The Raikage was the first to stand, flaring his chakra as he were not hesitating to want to destroy Madara. However, even Inoki, for as powerful as he was, would warn the Raikage not to underestimate him. As much as the Raikage hated to admit it, he too had heard of the legend of Madara Uchiha, and while his anger was getting the best of him, he were wise not to lose his temper. The 5 Kage in unison would agree that they would not hand over the 8 or the 9 tails, and as such, the masked man would declare war. War on all of the great nations and on the shinobi world. And that the next time they meet, it would be on the battlefield. As he would begin to swirl, as if time and space were all beginning to change, he would disappear from sight. Now the 5 Kage, knowing the direness of the situation, would all think to themselves that now was the time to work together. Under the leadership of the council, they would make preparations for war, choosing their leader and choosing how they would set up the armies to counter Madara, not knowing what he may bring. In the meantime, back in the Hidden Leaf Village, Satomi and Itachi would be at the Uchiha compound, in one of the private medical buildings. There they would have their operation done, having their eyes swapped with one another. They would be blinded for a short time, allowing them a chance to adjust, as they would now be working to gain the eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Even for Itachi to be back home, he wasn't too thrilled about going back to his old residency, even though Satomi understood how much it meant to him. He simply explained that to go back into the room, the very home where he had killed his own parents, that was just something he wasn't quite ready to deal with yet, as he would decide to stay in one of the other empty homes of the Uchiha district. In the meantime, Kakashi would return along with Guy and Lee. He would call a short meeting. Naruto and the others would be included, as he would explain the severity of the situation. There would be news that Tsunade would have awoken just in time, and that she was slowly regathering her strength. Kakashi would wait until she were fully up to speed before he would tell her more about what had happened at the 5 Kage summit. However, he would be pleased to see that the village was coming along nicely, learning that Naruto had been helping non-stop since he had left. And he would hear about the successful procedure for both Satomi and Itachi, knowing that they would be 2 critical assets that would be needed for the war. The Hidden Leaf would start to return to being in good spirits, with the recovery of Tsunade and with Naruto, now seen as the village hero, helping in rebuilding the Hidden Leaf Village. However, Naruto was dealing with his own anxieties at this time. It wasn't necessarily that he hated the village, although he did have a lingering resentment towards a few of them for how he was treated. The idea that one deed could change their perception of him was a little much for him to take. Satomi, even from a distance, while not currently present, could understand why Naruto felt the way that he did, and she wished that she could have a chance to talk to him. The bandages would be coming off any day now, so hopefully she would get a chance to see him again, this time with her new eyes. The village would be in a state of rebuilding, waiting for the other shoe to drop, so to speak, knowing that this would not be the last of their troubles to come. While Tsunade would be speaking with the other members of the Kage to discuss what to do with the Jinchuriki. Satomi would have now made a recovery, and now both she and Naruto would decide to go off on their own for a bit, as the two of them hadn't really had a chance to speak in such a while. So much had happened since Naruto had come back home. Sure, they had chances here and there to rest and to go out for a bit, but it seemed as though there was always something on the horizon, like there was always a new challenge around the corner. One night, as Satomi had now taken her bandages off, Naruto and her decided to go out. They would go and have ramen at Ichiraku before walking the streets of the village as it was slowly illuminating itself. As they walked over to the forest area over the Hokage monuments that looked over the outstretched village, looking over as the sky was aligned with stars, they would head to their favorite spot, the tree where they first met long ago as kids, where Naruto had carved their names together. While the bark was worn down and the names had faded some, the message still remained the same. The two would be happy to see how far they had come on their journey together, even though they had their own fair share of hardships and difficulties. They were glad to know that they could have gotten through what they did by being together. Satomi would look to Naruto as she could see something were on his mind. She would ask him what was bothering him. At first, Naruto would try to play it off, but Satomi would make it very clear that she had come to learn much about the blonde-haired boy in their 17 years on this earth, and that she wasn't so easily swayed as to not know when something was bothering him, as his face was like an open book that was easy to read for a girl like her. That's when Naruto would look to her in seriousness, and he would tell her that deep down, he had his doubts. There were times in his life when he couldn't quite figure out everything. Sure, he knew what he wanted to do. He knew what type of man he wanted to be. But for some reason, it just felt different when she was around. Satomi would blush at this as she had never seen this side of Naruto before, or at least not as often as she would hope. However, Naruto would continue to explain, telling her that as much as he wanted to be Hokage, he found himself thinking of her whenever the situation became dire. It wasn't that he didn't have the dream or the drive to become Kage, but it was that above all else he wanted her to be by his side when he did so. Just as he had said years ago, the title of Hokage, for as much as it might mean to him, it would mean nothing if the ones who were with him from the beginning were not there with him till the end. He would look to her and tell her that more than anything, he wanted to protect her. He wanted to protect his home, to protect the world, and that was his true #1 priority. Satomi would blush mildly at this, as this was a side of Naruto that often made her flustered, and usually knocked her off her calm and collected demeanor. However, she would return those feelings for Naruto, noting that she could have easily gone down a different path, that for so long her mind was warped on vengeance and hatred. Even deep down, as much as she tried to hide it, she could not deny the anger that she felt, and that it was only thanks to Naruto that she had been given a second chance, and that this was something she did not plan to squander. She and Naruto would hug under the tree. They would share, for just their second time, a kiss. It would be a brief one. However, this kiss would convey much emotion. It was a promise in a way, a promise that they would make it through whatever trials and tribulation came in the future, and that they would come out on the other side together. Soon would come time to discuss what to do with Naruto. Naruto was not too dumb not to know that the village was preparing for war. More than likely it was going to be against the Akatsuki. However, what did not please Naruto was the idea of being hidden away. The village, while they appreciated Naruto, and while Tsunade made it very clear that he was a powerful shinobi, and someone that they did indeed trust, there was too much at stake to put Naruto's life on the line unnecessarily. Explaining that he was going to be hidden away on an island, where he would get a chance to train with a perfect Jinchuriki and learn how to truly harness the power of the Nine Tails. While this prospect did intrigue Naruto, he still hated the idea of being left on the sidelines, not being happy with the idea of everyone else fighting for him, when he should be fighting with them. Kakashi and Tsunade would try to speak to Naruto, and try to get him to understand things from a different point of view. However, it would be Satomi who would be the one that would finally reach through to him. As Satomi would speak to Naruto, she would make it very clear that from the promise that they had made, the last thing that she was going to do was ever allow Naruto to be taken away from her. She had already lost so much in her life, and slowly she was putting it back together. She had regained a brother. She had Naruto. She had the village. And she felt like she had a future that was worth protecting. That future was not going to be taken away from her. Even though Naruto would protest and complain, Satomi would flick him on the forehead before pulling him close, telling him that she could not and would not live a life without him, and that she was going to do everything in her power to win this war. She would promise that when it was over, she was going to come for him, and that the two of them were finally going to go in a direction that they needed to go in. Naruto would be a bit flustered at this more abrasive side of Satomi, as it had been a while since she had let it out. However, he could see by the look in her eyes that she was not lying, and that these convictions were strong within her own heart. Satomi truly believed that she alone could save Naruto, that she was going to do everything in her power to end this war, and that she was not going to die as one of its casualties. No, she was going to win, and when she did, she was going to come home to Naruto, and then they would move on together as one true family. Naruto would finally relent. Now, with Satomi and his blessing, he would pack and pair his things, as Might Guy and a few other shinobi would begin their escort mission to take Naruto to the island, where he would go and train with Killer Bee. In the meantime, the village would prepare and make their preparations for war. However, they would not be the only ones gearing up, as the masked man would be preparing his own. He would be invited by the one known as Kabuto. Kabuto explaining that he had a lot to offer, and that he wanted to aid in this upcoming fight, revealing his mastery over the Edo Tensei, as well as having one in particular to use as insurance. He and the masked man would strike a deal, and that in exchange what he wanted was Satomi and Itachi. The masked man would agree, as he had not been fooled like the others had. He knew that Itachi Uchiha was still alive and had betrayed them, and that now he was more than likely going to be in the war. A nuisance, a loose end that needed to be tied up. Before any further proceedings, Tsunade would speak to the village. She would reintroduce Itachi Uchiha and explain that he were being pardoned. There would be much murmuring in the Hidden Leaf village, many not knowing how to feel. Itachi had come to accept his past, and with no regret, he would allow Tsunade to give a brief summary of what happened. She would explain the treachery of Danzo and the Foundation. She would explain how it was a false flag operation, and that Itachi merely took the blame in order to go undercover and serve his village. Now with that being established, and Itachi now being seen as one of the Leaf's heroes, while it would take some time, people would start to come around. With the war now looming in the distance, they needed all of the help that they could get, and someone like Itachi was more than welcomed. Eventually the time of the war would come, as Gaara, along with Kakashi and the other captains, would speak to the amassed armies, each platoon made up of shinobi of the 5 great nations. Gaara would still give his rousing speech to rally the troops together for battle. Among Kakashi's platoon, there would be Satomi and Itachi Uchiha. Being led by Kakashi of the Sharingan, 3 of the Leaf's most powerful ninja would be together again, as they would move as the 4th Division. They would come face to face with the White Zetsu army, as well as that of the Edo Tensei. Their primary battle coming in the forest, where they would come face to face with the revived Zabuza, as well as Haku. Among Kakashi's platoon would also be Suigetsu, now with the Executioner's Blade, as he would come face to face with his own brother. The 2 of them having a lively chat, as they hadn't seen each other in a while. While Kakashi would battle with Zabuza, Haku would battle with Satomi, the 2 remarking how strong they had gotten in that time. Zabuza asking what had happened to Naruto. Kakashi would explain that Naruto had forged his own ninja way, thanks to Zabuza, and that he were a living embodiment of it, and that he was now seen as a hero. Satomi would continue her battle against Haku, Haku remarking that Satomi had gotten much stronger since the last time they had faced one another. Satomi would thank Haku for what she did, Haku wondering what she meant by that. However, Satomi would explain that she knew that Haku didn't use his full power against Naruto, and that even though she didn't know it at the time, he made her a lot stronger because of it. Haku would simply smile, knowing that his kind heart did not go in vain. In the meantime, Naruto would still undergo his training with Killer Bee, and not only would he master that of the Nine-Tails power, to some extent, he would get to meet two people that he thought he'd never see. While harnessing the power of the Nine-Tails, the seal placed within himself would go off, as Naruto would not only meet Kushina, but he would also meet his father, Minato. The 3 would be gathered together in the astral plane, Naruto hugging and embracing both of his parents. Kushina and Minato happy to see one another, if it was just for a brief moment, and to be able to hold their boy. Naruto would still go on to gain KCM, before eventually deciding that he had to join the war, as he couldn't just leave things up to fate. Satomi was fighting on the front lines, and he had to be by her side. Naruto and Killer Bee would break free from the island's barrier, and after receiving permission from Killer Bee and Tsunade, They would make their way to the battlefield. As HQ would alert the other shinobi that Naruto and Killer Bee were moving to join them, Kabuto would get wind of this as well, and he would have a few shinobi waiting to meet the two Jinchuriki. As he would summon back 3 in particular, 3 that he felt had a special connection to Naruto and Killer Bee. He would summon back Nagato Uzumaki, Fugaku Uchiha, and Sakumo Hatake. When the other companies got wind of the shinobi that had been revived, Kakashi and his team making quick work of the enemies with the much needed help from both Itachi and Satomi, as they were preparing to go and merge with a few of the other companies and aid them in battle. Upon hearing who had been brought back, Kakashi would place Guy in charge of the 4th platoon, as he, along with Itachi and Satomi, would go to back up Naruto and Killer Bee. All 3 of them would be pissed now. The Edo Tensei was such a disgusting jutsu. A jutsu that can make you fight your own loved ones. But even worse for them was that they would have to face their own fathers once again. With a quickness, they would soon be able to catch up with Naruto and Killer Bee, as they would come face to face with the 3 shinobi. Nagato, surprised to see Naruto here once again, although he would be happy to see that he had grown much stronger. There would be Sakumo, who would meet his son for the 2nd time since his death, now believing that this was a cruel fate, that the father should have to face the son. The white fang of the hidden leaf versus the man of 1,000 jutsu. But most heartbreaking of all would be Fugaku Uchiha, as he would come face to face with his 2 children, seeing them standing side by side. Well, even if I was a failure as a father, I am relieved to see that my 2 children were able to stand together again. Itachi would be moved to tears. It had already been hard enough to slay his father once, but now he would be forced to do it again. Naruto was also having mixed emotion. This was the first time he had seen Fugaku in such a long time. He had only known him before a short while, but Fugaku had always been kind to him as a young child. Fugaku would then turn to see Naruto, glowing in his Kurama chakra. Well, if it isn't Naruto Uzumaki, seems you've gotten a lot stronger since the last time I saw you. I remember when you were just a little boy who would come over to our house for dinner. And I must say, I am proud of the man that you have become, Naruto. And I thank you. Naruto, fighting back on his own tears, he would ask Fugaku what he was thanking him for. And Fugaku with a smile would say, "Thank you for looking after my baby girl when I wasn't able to." The shinobi would take their stances as they would get ready for battle. Nagato, Sakumo, and Fugaku as they prepared to face their loved ones. Naruto, Killer Bee, Kakashi, Itachi, and Satomi. The battle lines had now been drawn. Many emotions were going to be displayed in this fight, as the 4th Great Shinobi War raged on. This concludes Naruto Yokai Shippuden, What If Sasuke Uchiha Was a Girl, Part 5. As always, if you like today's video, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything Power Core Productions and Podcastings that has to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for other things that are to come in Power Core Productions, and make sure you watch that community tab so that you can be up to date on any news and announcements that come out as well. But that's going to do it for the end of today's video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Signing off, and I'll see you next time.